Hi everyone, it's been a little while, hasn't it? It's not that the badminton calendar's been too quiet, although it kind of has been. Still, plenty has been going on, but I'm back with another episode of Beckman's Breakdown, the show where I take a look at all the BWF events at Super 750 and Super 1000 level, including the majors and the team events. And it's that last one, team events, which brings me here today, because the end of this week is going to be the beginning of this year's edition of the Thomas and Uber Cup finals. If any of you don't know what those tournaments are, basically the Thomas Cup is the World Men's Team Championships, Uber Cup, the World Women's Team Championships. It happens every 2 years, and the events have been united since 1984. But for the sake of this video, because there's 16 teams in each competition, each with a minimum of around, apart from a few teams, about 10 players each, there's so much to get through that I'm going to split these videos into two. So I'm going to start with the Thomas Cup, and in another video, there'll be a link below and a link at the end. I'll also do the Uber Cup. And if you somehow stumbled on the Uber Cup video first, the reverse will be true. In each of these videos, I'll be talking about most of the teams, my thoughts on each group as a whole, and some predictions for the group. But I will also give my dark horse. I will be doing that and some other thoughts as well. So let's quickly get to this, starting with Group A. So in this group, we have China, India, Canada, and Australia. So China are the top seeds, and they've sent a strong team, a pretty standard team. They've got 4 men's singles players, Xiu Qi, Li Shifeng, Weng Hongyang, and Lu Guangzhou. And then in the men's doubles, they've got Wang Liang, Chen Liu, and He and Ren. And so let's start with the singles. I think China will be very happy with the fact that Xiu Qi showed some really amazing form at the Asia Championships, in which he won in very convincing fashion, not dropping a single game. Because before then, whilst he was still world number 1 or just dropped to world number 2 after his performance, especially at the All England, many people were already saying, is this Xiu Qi on the way down? Which seems like a rather ludicrous statement. I remember at that All England that I think he did an interview with CKU where he might have mentioned that there hadn't been much training. He hadn't really trained much for the All England. So clearly with there not being a crazy amount of events between the All England and now, I reckon the Chinese, and we're going to see that through most of the Chinese players, I think they're obviously going to be taking the Thomas and the Uber Cup very, very seriously. And it looks really good for China at first singles. Going to be very difficult to claim any points from there. He is the world number 1. But below that, there are some doubts. And there's also some doubts in the men's doubles. Li Shifeng, he rolled his ankle at the World Tour Finals last year. He's had some okay results this year, but nothing really amazing that will give a lot of the Chinese fans huge faith that he can deliver a lot of points. Obviously, he is capable, but there's some doubts, and definitely other teams will be sensing blood in the water if Li Shifeng's playing there. And it's very likely that he's going to play, because at third, you've got Weng Hongyang. He's an up-and-down player. And then their fourth player, Lu Guangzhou, he withdrew at the Asia Championships. I'm not sure if that was an injury. And I think for China, it would be a bit of a blow if he is injured. Because like I said about Li Shifeng, if he's not firing and they could sense that he's not playing particularly well, obviously if they've got Lu Guangzhou and Weng Hongyang, those two could step up. They could just move up into second and third, and Li Shifeng could be dropped. And whilst that would make an impact to the team, it wouldn't make an absolute huge one. I also think it'd be a bit of a blow if Lu Guangzhou can't really play, because whilst his style isn't good against some opposition, it is against others. And I think the Chinese players have I haven't looked at every single possible head-to-head, but Lu Guangzhou could be quite useful against certain players. I'm sure there are some at third singles where he probably does have the preferred style, and so he'd be a good option. But maybe, I don't know why he withdrew from the Asia Championships. Maybe someone can fill that in the comments. Also, it just, if for Li Shifeng as well, if he can't play all matches, because at second, even in the knockout stages, unless he's playing against a team where the order has to be rejigged, he will certainly play. So maybe he's not fully fit. I don't know. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of question marks and a lot of doubts next to the Chinese team. And in their doubles, it's a bit similar, because as we know, Wang Liang, they won the India Open 750 this year. They got to the semi-final in Germany. But on top of that, they lost to the young Indonesian pair at the All England, and they got beaten pretty convincingly. They didn't really put up much of a fight in that match. They lost in the first round of the Super 1000 to Hoki and Kobayashi. So they're a bit of an up and down pair. I've been pretty positive about them, and I still am. But again, you never quite know what you're going to get with that pair, and that's not what you want from your top pair. But below that, I think there is something very positive for the Chinese. Chen and Liu have looked strong. They looked really good in Germany, where they won. They reached the semi-finals of the All England. And they lost, although they lost in the second round of the Age Championships, it was in 2 close games to Alfian and Fikri, the top pair from Indonesia. So they're pretty good. The only thing against them is this will be their Thomas Cup debut, which you're never quite sure how players are going to handle that. You know, all matches have their different pressures with them. So can they handle them? And there's possibility that China might put them at first doubles because their third pair is He Jiting and Ren Shangyu, a pair that have kind of returned because He Jiting was banned for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to get into all the details. But since kind of coming back, they had a bit of a slow start at the Asia Men's Team Championships. But very recently, they got to the semi-finals of the Asia Championships. They actually beat Wang and Liang, and they gave the number ones in the world, Kim Won-ho and Seo Seung-jae, a pretty decent match in that semi-final. So having their presence in the team gives China a little more depth, a little more security. Say Wang and Liang or Chen and Liu. If one of those isn't playing particularly well, He and Ren can step up to second doubles. So yeah, I think that will give them a little bit more security. If it wasn't for them, they obviously have other players, but they're not as seasoned or as experienced. I think there would be more fragility in the Chinese doubles. I guess the big question for China, if they do wish to play He and Ren at 2, who would they drop? Maybe they can mix and match depending on the pairs they come up against. But having said that, for the group stages, because we don't know who they're going to play in the knockouts, I don't think this is going to overly matter, as no one in there, not really anyone in the match they're going to play, have a strong men's doubles, apart from India's first pair, but I'll get onto those in a second. There is some concerns surrounding that. So I don't think in terms of group stages, it really matters for China who they field at second doubles. They should, again, win all of their matches. Maybe we'll have an indicator of who will play in the knockout rounds based on who China field against India. So I think overall China is a very strong team, but they certainly have some holes and potential weaknesses. They are the defending champions, but will have to seriously fight to defend that title. And they're going to have a pretty big challenge in the group stages because the next team is India. They have 5 singles players actually in their lineup. I'm not going to go through every single player. I'll probably put it on the screen. And they brought 2 doubles pairs and then Dhruv Kapila, who's a mixed doubles player, but who has played men's doubles in the past. So for India, on paper, a very, very strong team. Lakshya Sen and Ayush Shetty have been making waves this year. 2 very good performances that will give Indian fans huge faith and belief that maybe they can repeat what they did in 2022, and that was Lakshya reaching the final of the All England, and Ayush Shetty reaching the final of the Asia Championships, where he defeated Li Shifeng, a player that he could play against in the group stages. He beat Jonathan Christie, who's the Indonesian number 1. He beat Kulovat Vitisan, who was the world number 1 and top seed. So just really, really positive. And I know a lot of Indian fans have been kind of getting quite excited, especially when they combine it with the men's doubles. But I'll get to that in a second. In their 3rd, 4th and 5th, they got plenty of experience, especially their 3rd and 4th player, which is Srikanth and Pranoy. Both players have shown they can still play well, but it is a little bit rare. It's not quite as strong as when they were in these positions 4 years ago. This year, Pranoy has beaten Lee Chuk-yu of India, and Srikanth beat Koki Watanabe in the Indonesian Masters. And Koki Watanabe, for anyone knows, is potential 3rd player for Japan and a very strong player. And Srikanth actually went to 3 with the world number 4, Christo Popov, in the India Open. So not amazing results that anyone can go, wow, they're absolutely on fire, but just enough to give a little bit more belief. And I think you've got to add to that the fact that both those players are extremely experienced. Srikanth was the 3rd singles player for India when they won, and he did absolutely brilliantly. He delivered the winning point, in fact. So I think overall pretty good. And at 5th, they got Kieran George, who I know is also pretty capable. Having said that, I guess there's always going to be a few little things you can pick out. For me, Ayesh's inexperience could be a factor. This will be his Thomas Cup debut. He did play the Asia men's teams, where he lost to Korea's Yoo Tae-bin, who's a good player, but obviously not someone who's playing on the world tour. So I think for him, whilst he's had this really good result at the Asia Championships, we'll just have to see. It's a huge responsibility coming in at second singles. You could be in a position to win a match. You might have to give your team the lead. You might have to start a resurgence of a comeback. It's that midpoint of the match, and lack of experience can sometimes be a factor. I guess just to flip it around, just to finish on a positive when it comes to him, is the way that he played the Asia Championships. I thought was a real improvement, because I've seen in the past sometimes him going through periods where he sprays out his shots, loses his patience, loses his focus, and I felt that was actually something that was really, really strong and a big improvement at those Asia Championships. But I think the big thing for India, the huge question mark, the one that is the reason why I haven't picked them as a dark horse, and whilst I think they can come through this group, getting further and getting to the medals will be difficult, and that is that usually they can rely on at least one men's doubles. That's their top pair of Ranki-Reddy and Shetty. But with the withdrawal of Ranki-Reddy from the Asia Championships recently because of his shoulder injury, and I know that was plaguing him at the All England. That's why one reason why they didn't do particularly well there, and it's been like a concern pretty much for this whole year. So it obviously doubts. Again, I don't know the behind the scenes. Maybe they miss Asia Champs because he only needs maybe a week or two more rest, and he'll be then pretty much fully ready. But still, it's going to mean he's going to come in with less match play, and obviously that injury is probably not going to be 100%, or it's not going to be 100% tested. So for me, India really need that men's doubles, because at the second men's doubles, they rarely win matches against the top teams there. They've got a few options where they can switch that pair around, but I don't think that's really going to make much of a difference against all the top teams. I think are the favourites here have strong or very strong second doubles pair. So I think India will come through this group, although it will be a bit of a challenge, I think, against Canada, but they will struggle to get much further. They have a great team spirit, and you never know, but definitely not my dark horses this time around. Sorry, Indian fans. And moving on, Canada. Canada have two singles players in their lineup, Brian Yang and Victor Lai, who, you've probably heard of those names before, especially recently. Victor Lai, he got to the semi-finals of the All England. Did he get to was it the final or the semi-final of India? I think it was the semi-final. Obviously a bronze medalist at the Worlds last year. A very good player, just won the Pan Am Championships as well. And Brian Yang is, before Victor Lai, he was the player we were thinking could deliver really big results, and has created some firsts for Canada in the past when he reached, was it either Indonesia Open or Indonesia Masters final in the men's singles. So again, two very strong singles players. And I tell you what, those two matches against India, wow, very, very interesting. That could really, for me, having a real close look at that, if Canada can get both of those singles, it'll be really tough, but those are matches that are very tightly contested. I would like to say, at third singles, they have a player called Josh Nguyen, who's top 80 in the world, and whilst obviously he won't have as much experience or not as highly ranked to, say, Pranoy or Shrikamph, those guys are towards the end, and you never quite know. And also with two matches, pressure, there's so many factors. Canada, I think, have a potential chance. It's on the outskirts, chance of causing an upset, I think, here. Potentially knocking out India. And I think like I already mentioned about India, what might knock their confidence a bit. Again, we'll have to see when we get there, when the tournament gets underway. But the fact that both their doubles pairs might be slightly hindered. I still think a slightly off Ranki-Reddy and Shetty are still too strong for any pair that Canada can put forward. But if Canada can get that first and second singles, that can apply huge amounts of pressure. So I'm very excited to see a potential rematch of Victor Lai versus Laksha. They had an absolute epic at the All England. And I actually think Brian Yang versus Ayesha Shetty also could be very, very excited. I still have them as, for Canada, this is as probably coming third in the group. And rounding out the group is Australia, who I had a little look at their team. They got a good mix of, there's some really young players. I think there's like a 15 or 16-year-old in their team. And they got a few former Indonesian players, not national players, but obviously from Indonesia. There's a lot of players from Indonesia do do represent Australia, but I do think they'll struggle to get anywhere other than fourth in the group. So predictions / thoughts for this group: I think China will come first. I do think India will come second, but I think that India versus Canada match is potentially a very exciting group one, and I would definitely keep your eye on that. And I think for Canada versus Australia, I think Canada will win all the singles matches. I'm not really quite sure how the doubles matches will line up. So yeah, that's how I see Group A. Group B, we have Japan, Malaysia, England, and Finland. So for me, with Japan, I think the big thing that stands out is they haven't selected Kenta Nishimoto, who's technically on the world rankings their number 2 player, but instead they've dropped him, and they've got Koda Naoka, Yushi Tanaka, Koki Watanabe, and Yudai Okamoto. And that Yudai Okamoto has been actually playing pretty well recently, got to the semis of the All-Air Masters, and he did play for Japan at the Asia Men's Team Championships, where they actually won the tournament. I think Japan's singles lineup is pretty strong and solid, and I think it will be a little overlooked, actually. Even though they haven't selected their second highest ranked player of Nishimoto. It's a good mixture of experience and newcomers. It's not just a debut for Okamoto, but also Yushi Tanaka. So how will that play out? Especially with Tanaka being the second. Him and Koki, they're one spot. And I believe it's the rankings of that week which will determine. And so the rankings could change next week. I'm not sure if that's already set in place. Don't quote me on that. I tried to look at the rules, but the way I read it was that it's whoever's highest ranked at the tournament. So they're only like 1,000 points between themselves. So I'm not sure whether, how some tournament results can come out and go, whether that might switch. I don't think it makes too much difference. Japan might even like the fact that the more experienced Koki Watanabe is a very good third singles player for them. But then they might like to have him at second, where he will most certainly play. It's really quite open. But I think they have options in second and third, which I think could be quite crucial when they play against Malaysia. And I'll get to that in a second. I think I'll come to that right at the end, that crunch match. In the doubles, obviously we got Hokin Kobashi, very experienced, former world champions. They won Denmark last year, and this year's been okay, although they did have a surprise loss at the All England to the Popovs, but that was their first ever loss to that pair. But then again, lots of pairs had first losses, or players had first wins over certain players. That All England certainly sprung up a number of surprises. And then with their 2 other pairs, Kakuri Kumugai and Hiroki Nishi, and Yuichi Shimagami and Takumi Nomura, they will also be debuts. So there's quite a lot of players debuting, but in each of the singles and doubles, they have the more experienced players leading, which I think can obviously be a great thing for their future. But both pairs for Japan that could play at the second had big wins at the Asia Men's Team Championships. They played quite a role in Japan winning. Kakuri and Hiroki beat He Jiting and Ren Shangyu. I know that was her and Ren's comeback, kind of one of their first tournaments. They're a bit stronger now, but still they did beat them. And Yuichi and Takumi beat Raymond Indra and Nicholas Yauquin, who got to the semi-finals of the All England. So whilst they might be a little bit unknown, they're certainly good and are more than capable of delivering points in second men's doubles. So Japan won the Asia Team Championships earlier this year. Although it must be said, many of the teams didn't send their full squads. But Japanese players do have a lot of experience. I said this is the debut for a lot of the players for the Thomas Cup, but Japan, with their leagues, a lot of the players do have a decent amount of experience when it comes to team event situations. I think it's a pretty solid team for Japan, but one that's certainly looking with one eye on the future. Next is Malaysia. And they've got Lung Junhao, Justin Ho, and Aidil Shole and Lee Zijia in their singles. I think the big question is, can their singles players step up? Malaysia have 3 very strong doubles pairs. I'll come to those in a second. but in their singles, obviously, it's almost a little bit flipped on its head. There are still some doubts over Lee Zijia's fitness. I did that video earlier in the year about him where I felt he was playing really well, but there's been a few tournaments since where he looked like to be struggling a bit, looked a bit sluggish and unsure of himself. But still, having potentially Lee Zijia at third singles, I think he usually plays pretty well in team events. He delivered really well in the last couple of team events that he played. And so I think that's a pretty solid team. And I actually think, I'll come back to their match with Japan. Potentially, actually, the way that it works out, Malaysia might be the slight favourites in that one, actually, even though they're not the seeded team in this group. In terms of their doubles, I guess you could say not the best of prep or confidence builder at the Asia Championships. There was no medals for Malaysia in the men's doubles, despite having 3 pretty strong pairs, including the world number 2s and the defending champions Aaron Char and So Yik. They did lose in I think it was the quarterfinals to the second Korean pair. But we all know what the Malaysian men's doubles pairs are capable of. I don't want to get all negative when it comes to Team Malaysia, but I do think it's a real shame for them as a whole, as I think, personally, this generation of their players should be another golden generation like the early 90s or the 90s teams. Because I think we should have Lee Zijia at 1 and Ung Ziyong, or those two battling for first and second. Ung Ziyong's another player who's injured and out. He's too injured and out. And then I feel like Lung Junhao or a young Justin Ho would be perfect to come in at third. And obviously we know if you combine that with their doubles players, that for me is a team that's fighting for the championship. At the moment, they'll probably be happy to fight for just a medal. It's a bit of a shame for Malaysia, but then that's the nature of the sport. Now, before I get into the last 2 teams, let me talk, because I really do think the other 2 teams are England and Finland, and I don't think they're going to really have too much say on the group. I think really everyone, when they're looking at Group B, they're looking at the Japan-Malaysia showdown and who's going to come out of that group top. Because obviously it's quite key to come out top, because then you avoid all the other top teams and you could possibly get a favourable draw. Japan are seeded, but I think drawing Japan for Malaysia is a pretty good thing. So for me, there's a few question marks when it comes to the Japan-Malaysia showdown. Will Japan drop Kodai Naraoka? Now, he's their top player, so it sounds like, well, Ben, why are you even suggesting that? Well, Malaysia, will probably most likely feed Lung Junhao at 1, and Kodai has a 4-1 negative head-to-head against Lung Junhao. And then if you add to that Yushi Tanaka, who would at the moment be the second singles player, has never lost to Lung Junhao. He has a 2-0 head-to-head. And then if, say, it's a switch, so we got Koki Watanabe potentially going 1 place higher, Lung Junhao is 4-2 up. However, Koki did convincingly beat Lung Junhao earlier this year. So with both their potential second players for Japan having much better stats against Lung Junhao, will Japan drop Kodai? Personally, I could see it most certainly happening. After that, you'd have the first men's doubles, and although the Japanese pair, Hoki and Kobayashi, have a 9-3 head-to-head, the last 5 of those matches have been tight 3-game affairs, and the Malaysians did win their last encounter at Singapore Open, although that is a very different venue, so it would obviously require a different style to play. Potentially, maybe Malaysia could drop Aaron So and put Man and T, although they're 2-1 down, but they won their last encounter versus the Japanese very comfortably at last year's Malaysia Masters. The funny thing is, I said, would Japan drop Kodai? But then if you look further down, and you get to say it's 2-2, which could happen, because probably Japan probably favourite in second men's singles, Malaysia favourite in second men's doubles, so it could potentially be 2-2. Get to third men's singles, deciding time, crunch time. Koki or Yushi, could be Koki, if they come against Lee Zijia, it's then 3-0 to Koki Watanabe. So do Japan keep Kodai in to make sure that they're stronger in the third? Or do you risk the fact that, I said that it could be 2-2, but a lot of these matches are pretty tight. Do you want to go for the good start, or do you want to have a slightly maybe stronger end? Because if you drop Kodai, then you've got to have Yudai Okimoto, who's, whilst he's good, but he's inexperienced and he's coming up against potentially Lee Zijia. So there's lots of interesting choices. I think it's going to be the big one is what Japan do with their first men's singles. I think all the other spots, I mentioned maybe Malaysia switching their doubles, but again, I'm not too sure. There's more likely Malaysia are going to have a conversation about their second men's doubles. Do they put Go and Ner, or do they put Man and T in to come up against one of those two younger Japanese pairs? So lots of interesting choices. I think rounding out this group, so let me just move away from that. Obviously, we have England and Finland. It's a shame England don't have Lane and Vendy. I'm not sure why they're not playing. They're the recent European champions, but they do have the European bronze medalists, Alex Green and Zach Russ, and Harry Wang is always improving. So maybe they could apply some small pressure. I think it'd be quite an interesting 3rd v 4th match with Finland and England. England won 3-2 in their European men's team championship match earlier this year. But even though we haven't got Lane and Vendy, England are probably still the favourites because they won both the men's doubles and they picked up the 3rd singles. And I think even without Lane and Vendy, the fact that Finland usually have to double up with singles players in the doubles events, I think England should still take both doubles, and I think they can pick up one of the singles somewhere. But that's not an absolute guarantee. So yeah, group-wise, okay, so obviously Malaysia and Japan are going to come through. I think 1 and 2. But in terms of who's going to come 1, I'm going to go with Malaysia. I think just a little bit more experience throughout the team. I know they haven't had the best of Asia Championships in preparation for this, but yeah, they beat them 2 years ago in the quarterfinals. So I know it was a different team. The order was different. Lee Zijia was at 1 back then. But I think I'll go with Malaysia 1, Japan 2. Group C, Chinese Taipei, Denmark, Korea, and Sweden. So this is really, for me, the first group where there's a little bit of interest in like the fact that in the other two, as you could tell, it was quite clear that I have a clear 1-2. I know Group B, I wasn't sure who would come 1 or 2. But this is really the first group where there's an interest for those 2 qualifying spots because we have 3 top teams. So let me go through them. I'll start actually with the team that I think won't qualify or have too much impact, and that is Sweden. They did really well to qualify for this event with a bronze at the European Men's Team Championships. And they've got some very talented players on their team, but unfortunately for them, they've been drawn with 3 very strong teams. So let's go to those. Chinese Taipei. They've gone for 4 strong singles players in Cho Chen, Lin Chunyi, Chi Yuzhen, and Li Chaohao. They obviously haven't selected Wang Zuwei, who's been a bit of a staple in the Chinese Taipei Thomas Cup teams for the last number of editions. But, I don't think really he's going to be all too much missed because they have so many singles players that are so strong. Obviously, Cho Chen is going to be their top player. And actually, I think Cho Chen still being ranked as their number 1 is probably a good thing, as that means at second they can have the All-England champion, Lin Chunyi. Now, Lin Chunyi, a bit like Lu Guangzhou earlier, didn't play the Asia Championships for whatever reason, whether he, after his All-England win, he took a little bit of time off, or the media expectations on him, so he didn't feel particularly ready and wanted to make sure he's ready for the Thomas Cup. I'm really not too sure. There's an injury. There can be many factors. Please do fill in the gaps that I do leave. But I do think the crux of it doesn't matter. He is travelling, and I think, like I said, having Cho Chen top singles is good because he's very experienced. He's still proven that he can deliver big wins, but it just strengthens the second singles even more. And then I think they'll probably more likely go for Chi Yuzhen more frequently in a third over Li Chaohao just because of recent results. But they do have many options because, whilst I said they won't play Li Chaohao maybe as much. He's a former All-England finalist, has been struggling, but we know what he's capable of. In the men's doubles, again, they have 3 really strong pairs. two of which I think most people know of. And I think Li Jiahui and Yang Po Xuan, that second men's doubles is dangerous. But like I said, they've got options. So overall, a very strong team. But then again, that is Taiwan in a nutshell. Last time they got bronze, it was their first ever bronze medal. With this team, they could easily go further. I said they were my dark horses 2 years ago. I'm not sure they can be my dark horses again, though, because they are one, for me, a dark horse is someone that's a little bit outside the top like 2 or 3 teams, and I would probably put Taipei, based on the team they've got, as a team in that bracket, probably alongside China and Indonesia, actually. So, yeah, a very, very good team. The only, I guess, one quick question mark is Lin Chunyi, at not just the injury thing or the fact that he didn't play the Asia Championships, but the Asia Men's Team Championships. I think he lost every single match he played. So he would obviously be in a position that he wants to do much better in these. But Thomas Cup is a whole different beast. Players are much more focused and prepared and ready for this tournament compared to the Asia men's teams, and possibly with the fact that he played the way he played the All England, maybe he was clearly training through that, and was probably not firing on all cylinders. So next is the host nation, Denmark. Denmark, for me, they got a good team, but they are vulnerable. They are nothing on what their team was even the last 3 editions. I think back to 2021 and 2022 editions, and they were like one of the favourites because they had 3 very strong singles players, and they had Kim and Anders, who were starting to have a really good period of their career, and then they had players like what's his name? I can't remember, but they had like Rasmus Kjær and Frederick Sogor. Really good, but they are obviously vulnerable. We've just heard the recent retirement of Victor Axelsen, a player who has led this team over the past decade and always done a really good job. He won't be there. Leading at this time is Anders Antonsen, who isn't, for me, having the best of 2026s. He had an underwhelming All England, and whilst he reached the final of the Europeans, his performance in that final wasn't particularly good, especially that first game, absolutely littered with mistakes against Christo Popov. And then they've got Magnus Johannesson and Ditlev Jägerholm. They're kind of back from injuries, but they have been having injury issues over the last couple of years. I think Magnus Johannesson will get the nod a little bit more often because he was sent to the European Championships. But again, he didn't have a great European Championships. He lost to Julian Karagi of Belgium in the round of 16. So not a lot of confidence, I think, for the singles team. So you got Rasmus Gemke at second as well, who actually I felt, out of all of them, played some of the best badminton at the European Championships. But as we know, over the last few editions, Denmark have really, over the last decade, even when they won, think back to when they won in 2016, they won based on basically their men's singles team, delivered majority of the wins. So they've always been a singles heavy team. And whilst they've got some really good players, there's lots of question marks and doubts amongst them. And they're going to have to rely on that singles to get through this group, because they're going to come up against Korea, who we all know is kind of the reverse of that. And in the doubles, just to add to the woes, Kim and Anders just aren't who they were even at the last Thomas Cup. I have heard that Kim Astrup has been suffering really bad injuries, some almost waking up from day to day, not quite sure whether he can play, train, or whatever. So there's huge doubts, and obviously their age is a factor. I think Lundgaard and Vestergaard are a great second pair. They've really been coming to their own. They've had some really good wins. They got another bronze medal at the European Championships earlier this year. And I think they're in a really good position where I think over the next couple of years we could see them become Denmark's top pair and go on from there. And I quite like the fact that they've got Rasmus Kjær, who obviously was playing with Frederick Sogor and very good, and they got Matthias Christiansen, who's obviously a mixed doubles player, won the European Championships. That gives them potential options to mix and match. For me, the way I see Denmark is, do they potentially take out Kim Astrup or Anders? Or, I reckon they might take out Kim and put Anders with either Rasmus Kjær and Christiansen, and leave Lundgaard and Vestergaard at the second. Or we could potentially see 2 scratch pairings. But I think that first one is an option that I could see Denmark doing. It all depends on, I think if Kim and Anders are like feeling fit or good, they'll probably keep them. But I wouldn't be surprised if Astrup is taken out. Anders Rasmussen's a pretty adaptable player. He's got plenty of experience. We saw when he partnered Fredrik Sogor, they did some really good things over the last couple of editions. So maybe he could partner up with either Matthias or Rasmussen, keeping Lundgaard and Vestergaard. I don't think they want to be in a position where they're pushing that pair into the top doubles. Unless then they want to keep Rasmussen and Matthias at number 2. But again, I'm not sure based on rankings whether, because of Rasmus Kjær being, I think, a bit higher, whether I don't quite know. But I could see them playing around with their doubles pairs quite a bit. But I think overall, I think Denmark will struggle to get into the medals. Personally, they might even struggle to get out of the group, as this isn't an easy one for them. We saw them lose for the first time in the European Men's Team Championships to France, the first time in like 78 years since the inception of the Thomas Cup. But if they lose in the group, it will be the first time since 1994. For me, it's quite crazy how they've gone from one of the favourites last time the Thomas Cup was in Denmark, that was 5 years ago, to them this year really not being considered for medals and potentially not even getting from their group. So, and the last team in this group, Korea. So I think for Korea, it's the reverse of Denmark. You know, historically, they've always had strong men's doubles, but pretty weak men's singles. And I think that's the same case here. But so I'll start with their men's doubles. There is one big thing, one big player missing, and that is Kam Min-hyuk. I've had loads of people asking me since this team was released what's happened to him. I've had two different reasons. One, someone said that he has to finish his military service, and another is that he's injured. I think it's a mild combination of both, mainly the injury though. He does have to finish his military service, but I would have no doubt, him being a world champion, that they could have figured out a workaround. I've heard that his knee, it was taped, and the tape got bigger as the Asia Championships went on. I think he has to, made a decision to skip the Thomas Cup and to rehab it and look more for the long term. And I think that's a smart move. It is a bit of a blow because obviously Korea have Kim Won-ho and Seo Jae, the world number ones, at top pair. And then obviously Kam Min-hyuk and Ki Dong-ju are the second pair, and they just reached the final of the Asia Championships. And they're actually a pair that I said that we've been building to something, and they've gone and proved that. So it's a real blow that two pairs that will come in, obviously number ones, and another pair that will have great confidence that Korea don't have them. But having said that, they've got really good options in their doubles. You've got Lee Jong-min, the youngster, a left-hander, very strong and adaptable. Jin Yong, who's won tournaments with Seo Jae before, when he won last year. And actually, they've got another guy called Cho Song-hyun, who actually plays very similarly to Seo Jae. Tall, left-handed, and he partnered, I think it was Jin Yong in Indonesia Masters, and did pretty well. He got to the quarters. And I believe he actually played some good matches with Kim Won-ho at the Asia Men's Team Championships. We all know how good and versatile Korean men's doubles players are at playing with each other. They're so used to doing that. That's part of the selection for the national team every single year. So whilst it's a blow they don't have Kam Min-hyuk, I think they will be able to work around that, and they're still going to have an insanely strong second men's doubles pair. Again, for me, is there a possibility? This might sound silly, but we know how good Kim Won-ho and Seo Jae are as a pair, one-on-ones. But we also know how good they are. They're like insanely good, but they're also good with other players. Do they split their top pair and make two slightly weaker but very strong pairs? Who knows? Maybe. I can't see them doing it against the pairs where obviously they're going to want to try and win, where the first men's doubles is a little bit tough, but it's a possibility. And whilst their singles is massively understrengthed in comparison to their doubles players, at the Asian Men's Team Championships, one of the standout stars for me was Yoo Tae-bin. I think he won 4 out of his 5 matches. He beat Lin Chun-yi, the All England champion. I think I saw him win against, he beat Aya Shetty, who just got to the Asia Championships final. He went to 3 with Lee Chuk-yu, and I think he had another good win over someone else. I think, Wang Zhengxing of China. So he is really good. The only thing for them, China haven't picked their most experienced singles player, Jun Hyuk Jin, who's still their number 1 player. Obviously, they're looking one eye on the future, I think, when it comes to their singles stars. But in terms of their chances, when I saw that he wasn't part of the team, I did see maybe that is a slight weakness, not just because they haven't picked their top player, but I think Yute Bin would have been perfect for second. I think he has potential to win more matches there than he does at first. And I think that might have taken a little bit of the stress off of him. But that's not the case. So maybe not having Jun Hutjin might affect their chances in a kind of weird way. Looking else at their other two singles players, they got a three singles player, Choi Ji-hyun. He defeated Eun Ka-long at the Asia Team Championships. Park Sang-yong, we went to 3 Jason Gunawan. And 2 tight games with Wang Zuwei, 2 players that most of you probably heard of. And Choi Hyun-woo, he's the lowest men's singles player, but he's only 19 years old. He reached the quarters of the World Juniors when he was just 16 in 2022. So, again, they are looking at the future, but also, whilst Korea men's singles is not as strong as the other top teams, and you'd consider Korea top team, it's not like they're completely out, and we all know that sometimes I've seen some of the Korean men's singles players, you don't see them on the world tour, but then they come out at a team event and they can suddenly pull out wins. So you never quite know. And there's always going to be that case of if Korea are going to apply a lot of pressure through their doubles, that's 2 matches, you only need to win 3. They need to win one of those 3. That can add pressure. But I mean, Korea hasn't medalled in 10 years, and that's mainly because of their drop-off in their singles players around the same time. I could see them coming through this group, but medaling, I feel that might still be out of reach. So, like I said, right at the start of this group, it's the one with the first bit of real interest because it's not a kind of definitive top 2 teams. I actually could see this being a 3-way tie. I could see... Let me just quickly run through. I've got my notes here. So let's just go through Denmark versus Chinese Taipei. I think you got the slight advantage in the singles for Taiwan, especially in second and third. And then I think a big question mark, what will Denmark do in the doubles? Kim and Anna have lost their last 2 matches to Wang and Chia. So that's the top 2 pairs facing each other. Lee Jihui and Yang Po Swan are 3-0 over Daniel Lungor, Mads Vestergaard. But the last encounter was 3 tight games. So again, Chinese have the advantage in the doubles as well, which obviously does give them that. But will Denmark mix around their doubles to try to maybe come up with solutions to that? Again, I think with Taipei against Korea, I could see that being 3-2 with Korea winning all the doubles, Taipei winning all the singles. I think the big crunch match for me, I think I can see Chinese Taipei going through. I think they just got the depth in their team, and I think that can give them enough wins to get through. The big match is Denmark versus Korea. There's huge pressure on Anders Antonsen at 1, but he should win, and he has to win. I've seen him crumble a few times in some of the Thomas Cups in the past when he was second. You know, that big loss to Christie. Did he lose to the Korean guy as well once? I can't remember. Or was he pushed really hard? But anyway, I know that he's struggled a little bit with some of the pressure, but he hasn't been playing particularly well, but I think he will still win that one. I think doubles are pretty much careers. I can't really see either Danish pair winning that. See, this is why I felt Yute Bin, if he had been at second, him against Gemka, that's an even match in my mind. And I actually think Korea have a chance at third men's singles. This is a difficult one. You can imagine this is difficult, but I'm going to go with, unfortunately, I'm going to see Denmark knocked out in the group stages. I think, yeah, but this is tight. So I'll go with I think Chinese Taipei will come top, and I think Korea will come second. Although I think a lot of these matches will come down to the third singles. Wow. I think a lot of this hinges on, obviously, team selections as well. Okay. Really, really difficult. Okay, so let's move on. I'll just stick with... Oh. Okay, let me come back to that one at the end, actually. Okay, Group D. Again, it's another group that has 3 strong teams in it. We have Algeria rounding out the group. I don't really know too much about them, and I think, in all honesty, they're probably the weakest team in the whole of the competition. So I'm not going to talk about those guys too much. The other three teams in this group are Indonesia, France, and Thailand. So for Indonesia, a pretty standard lineup for them. A really strong singles lineup, actually. Christie, Farhan, Ginting, and Ubaidullah. Great options. Ginting at third. He's been playing pretty well recently, and he has so much experience. But then I think Ubaidullah is young and upcoming, and he seems to have a really good head on his shoulders. Obviously, Christie, he did lose to Ayaz Shetty at the Asia Championships, but we do know how solid he is. He's had a pretty solid 2026 in the early stages. Semi-final in Malaysia, final in India. I guess his recent form, I just mentioned the Asia Championships, but the All England was a little bit of a flop. I thought the way that he performs there, where he lost to Lin Chunyi, wasn't particularly strong. But I watched his match against Ayaz Shetty. It wasn't too bad. Ayaz Shetty was just having an absolutely phenomenal week. Second, Farhan. He's really coming into his own. And I think, like I said, for a number of these players, second men's singles is a perfect place for him at the stage of his career. For me, I think when it comes to a singles lineup, this is probably the most put together, aside from maybe one of the other teams in this group, which is France, who are actually, obviously, as you know, in this group. But so Indonesia, France in the singles lineup is absolutely one not to miss. And as we know, in doubles, Indonesia are also very, very strong, experience and options. Although actually, funnily enough, all three pairs have never played as a pair in the Thomas Cup before. Obviously, Alfin and Fikri have got caps and have played Thomas Cups, but their other two pairs, Gutama and Isfahani and Indra and Joaquin, this will be their Thomas Cup debut. So that possibly isn't a factor to consider. But yeah, Alfin and Fikri have been playing, obviously, good badminton, semi-finals at the Asia Championships. Gutama and Isfahani. I know Isfahani has some injury issues this year. Hopefully he's fully fit, because he would definitely give them options. And their style is actually very good against certain players and pairs. So I think the fact that if they have those options where they can switch and mix and match, I think will be really strong for Indonesia. For Indra and Joaquin, very young and inexperienced. Again, it shows that I think the Indonesian coaches are really trying to give this pair as much exposure to World Badminton as possible. They had a fantastic All England, reaching the semis and beating a number of really good pairs. Since then, they have lost to a few slightly lesser pairs, or pairs that you'd think they should win. That leaves a little bit of doubt, I think, and might be even a bit of doubt in the selector's mind. But for me, Indonesia certainly has one of the strongest Thomas Cup teams based on everything. Good depth throughout, options in both events, and a mixture of youth and experience. I think if Christie had been better recent form, it'd be really, really strong. But before the 2021 Thomas Cup, where Indonesia win, he wasn't playing particularly well, but suddenly delivered crunch performance after crunch performance. So we know that he can turn it around on a dime. In fact, it's almost, I think, on social media or online, that's kind of what he's known for, is great result, and then down, 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 and then suddenly out of nowhere comes a great result. So I think Indonesian fans will be hoping for that quick peak. Next is France. Like I said, in similar ways to Indonesia, a very strong singles lineup. The only thing looking at the team is that 4 singles. They've gone for Enagat Roy, who's a young left-hander, over Arnold Merkel. And the reason for that is Arnold Merkel, who actually got European bronze, beat Alex Lanier in the quarters of the European Championships, is undergoing hip surgery. He's been having persistent issues, so he's having that to kind of fix things, so that's why he's not playing. It's a bit of a blow, but not a massive one, because we know that they're probably going to play the two Popov brothers and Alex Lanier pretty much all of the time. I could only really see Enagot Roy playing when they come up against Algeria. So, obviously, as we know, Christoph Popov, European champion, world number 4, World Tour finals winner. Very, very strong player, and has a pretty good... I'm not sure if I looked at his record against... he has a positive head-to-head against both Christie and also Kunlut Vitetsan, who's obviously the top singles player for Thailand. So France will feel confident about that. Alex Lanier didn't have the best amazing European Championships, but let's not forget the Thomas Cups are in Horsens, which held the European Championships last year, where Alex Lanier won his European title. So maybe happy memories. For me, when it comes to France, obviously their men's doubles slightly weaker on the world stage. But I think, again, like I've spoken about order of some teams with their singles, or like I spoke with Denmark about who they might pair, maybe the French, it will be quite interesting in terms of who they field. Most people might think, oh, they'll field the Popovs, but then they're playing both the singles. Doubling up is hard enough in a tournament where you can have it spread out. In a Thomas Cup match, day after day, that isn't a long-term solution. They're going to have to use that rather sparingly. So for me, the only thing that gives them a little positivity is they've added Julian Mayo and William Veliger, who got to the final of the German Open, beat like Aaron Char and So Yik. I think they beat Li Jiawei and Yang Po Xuan, and went to 3 with Chen Boyang and Li Yu. So they weren't in the European team championship team that won gold, but they add a little bit more options. All 3 of the pairs that they've got, and that's excluding the Popovs, are all very capable. The only thing when it comes to their men's doubles, and I don't know why he's not been put in, because he played quite a role in them beating Denmark and winning the European men's team championships, is Tom Druckel, the mixed doubles player. He's not been announced for the team. I have no idea why, and I'm a little bit surprised, because I think that he gave good options. We saw in that European men's team, he played second doubles with Toma. They won European junior gold together back in 2017. They're the same age, they grew up, they know each other, and I think they can't play both Popov brothers in both matches, but they need to use kind of one, and Tom is a good player to use for that. And I think having Tom Druckel, where they could link that up, gave them a little bit more something, gave them a little bit of uncertainty that other teams weren't quite sure what to expect. So, the fact that Tom Druckel's not on the team, I have no idea why. Personally, I see that as a slight knock on France's chances. So for me, I think France are probably most people's dark horses. They're the 5th seeds and have the team to defeat anyone. It's pretty similar to what I said of Denmark in 2020 and 2022, but we did see what happened to those teams where the pressure was a little bit too much. And look, to add to that, I've just compared them to Denmark. I think back in those 2 editions, Denmark's doubles areas were stronger than France's. So France cared. We know they could win every single match, 3 singles, but their doubles is okay, but not as good as Denmark's was, and they struggled to win with just 3 singles players. So yes, I think a dark horse. I think definitely a chance to get amongst the medals, but to go and win the whole thing is going to be quite the task for them. I've got something else in regards to let me quickly go through the last team. Thailand, 2 stars really of their team, which is Kunlavut, Vititsan in the singles, and Deechapon, Pruvanukro in the doubles. Although he's a mixed player, very, very versatile, and will be absolutely necessary. I think they're going to require their 2 superstars to really step up. Adding to that, it's not them. They've got a few players to back them up. I think in the singles, you've got Pinitrafont, Teratsukun, who suddenly sprung up this year with his 2 final results at the Thailand Masters and Indonesia Masters. Left-handed, very attacking. Took Laksha to 3 at the last Thomas Cup as well. So I think he's given Thailand some much-needed depth and will apply pressure to other teams. Outside of that, you'd think they might have picked Kantafon Wangcharon, the 2019 World Bronze medalist. Even though he slipped off from once he was over there, he's still their 3rd highest ranked singles player and brings experience, but they haven't taken him. I think they've gone for a couple of other youngsters. But I think they're not going to win much at their 3rd singles. And like I said, in the men's doubles, they'll need Deechapon, but there are some question marks over him as well, because he withdrew from the Asia Champs final in the mixed doubles because he'd exerted his body so much, he was incredibly dehydrated, and it was damaging his kidneys. So he's actually being monitored each day in the hospital. Hopefully he can play, not just for the neutral fan, I love watching him play. But obviously for Thailand's hopes, if he doesn't go, Thailand's chances of getting out of the group massively reduced. But they got some other players in terms of that could do well. I think they've also got another mixed pair, Rutinapak Opthong. I think he's really good. He can play decent doubles. You've got Pakapon and Parachai. They got the semi-final of the Swiss Open. And have also beaten the second pair from France. So that might give some confidence. They got, a decent team, but they are heavily reliant, I think, on their top two superstars, their top singles and their top doubles. So for me, it's another very interesting group. I've already said France versus Indonesia men's singles is tasty as hell. We got Christo versus Christie, 2-1 to Christo, but Christie did win the last one. Lanier versus Farhan, the same age and some huge battles. They're 2-2. And then potentially Toma Junior Popov versus Ginting. And again, 2-2 in that head-to-head. And Ginting will want revenge for losing to Toma both the Worlds and the Olympics held in Paris over the last couple of years. It could be, like I mentioned, it could be a Baidala, but I have a feeling Indonesia will go for experience. Men's doubles, I think when it comes to that match, Indonesia have the clear favourites, but don't sleep on France. For Thailand, I've already said they will need their two superstars to deliver, Kunluwat and Deechapom. Although against France, I already said Christo has, I think, 4-3 negative head-to-head against Christo, and he's lost the last 4. He's got a mild advantage against Christie. I think, again, with France versus Thailand, I think they're playing first. I think they have to play each other on the first day, which might change this. But when it comes to France, only 2 teams need to go through. You need to win 2 matches to go through. So it can be interesting. Do France go all in on day 1 against Thailand? Obviously, they field their 3 strong players in the singles. They're going to do that against Indonesia as well. But do they then also field the Popov brothers and go for that win, just as like a backup? It would also change the order. So the 3 singles would have to go first. Maybe they could win 3-0, and then the Popovs, if they're in, whilst they're doubling up, they don't necessarily have to try or put max effort in so they can rest. But if, say, they lose one of those, they've got a strong pair. Do they go all in on against Thailand to get that win? They're going to probably beat Algeria. And then against Indonesia, they'll probably still field the 3 singles players. Still chances to win. But in the doubles, they'll just field whatever pairs. They're not going to run that risk. Do they kind of put in it? I don't know. Do you follow? I hope you follow what I mean. Against Thailand, the Poppers are their strongest pair. So do they put those in as well? And just go all in on that match and throw against Indonesia? Or do they spread that out because they feel they got a chance to win both and top the group, which obviously would give them a more favoured chance of getting amongst the medals? There's a big decision, I think, that the French coaches are going to have to make when it comes to their team that they're going to select against Thailand. But I think in terms of coming through this group, my money is on France and Indonesia. I think Thailand rely a little too heavily on those 2 players. And I think the other good players like Teratsukun that I mentioned are a little inexperienced and not as good as the other teams. Teratsukun will play against Farhan. I don't think he's beaten him. And Lanier is better, also a bit too strong for Teratsukun. There are also doubts over Deechapom. And there's also just only so much that he can do. As for who tops the group between Indonesia and France, I've gone for Indonesia as I feel the pressure to deliver in the singles is increased by Indonesia having such a big advantage in the men's doubles. It means if they win both men's doubles, which they should, they only need to win one of those singles. And it's, like we said, it's very tight. The fact that France need to win all those 50-50 matches, I think if you're a betting man, it's more likely that Indonesia will come out as top and France will come second. So, that's all the groups. I said I'd come back to Group C. I have been slowly thinking that through my mind. I think I can see... It's still too difficult to close. I'm going to feed that one over to you guys. I'm going to just shift the burden over to you. I know I did say at one point Taipei and Korea, but the more I think about it, it's very, very tight. Very, very tight. I think if Korea had brought Jung-Hook Jin, I think I would be more confident in Korea just because it would put Tae Bin to second, where I think he had more chance to win matches. At first, I think he might struggle, and as a result, I think Korea are going to struggle generally through 3 singles. I think Taipei will come through, but between Korea and Denmark, that's very, very difficult. So, yeah, no. As we know with the Thomas Cup, we always know it's going to be close because men's singles and men's doubles disciplines have been the hardest to predict in absolutely everything, and anyone can almost beat anyone. And obviously, the Thomas Cup is made up of those 2 events. So, for me, it's going to come down to each individual day. And obviously, for who wins the overall tournament, it's going to come down to the draw. It's going to come down to the draw. Obviously, as I've mentioned a few times, some of the selections, Japan versus Malaysia. Who does Japan play? Is it Kodai at first, or do they drop him to potentially try to? Because Kodai doesn't have a very good record against Long Junhao. What does France do with their doubles? What do Denmark do with their doubles? Who do Indonesia field in their singles? Do Korea mix around maybe 1 or 2 doubles? Thailand, is Deechapong going to be fully fit? There's lots and lots of questions. What did China do with their doubles? There's a lot of question marks around the doubles, that's for sure. But my top picks, I think, overall for the tournament are China, Indonesia. I think they just have the 2 strongest teams throughout in both disciplines with options. I think those 2 teams, they're the top 2 seeds for a reason. So yeah, but I think I dark horse, I will also go for a European team. I'll go for France, although I will say Tom Draquel not being selected for whatever reason might come to bite them slightly, as I think he does just give them more options in their team selections. Plus, he just has boundless experience on the bigger stages, and most likely play with Thomas Jr. And those 2 have grown up with each other. They know each other very, very well. So, for me, the last thing, I guess, is there's definitely some battles of the 3rd singles with players that have a lot of experience and new players who've led their teams in the past. Ginting, Lee Zijia, Pranoy and Shrikant, Wang Charon, and Toma Jr. Popov. So, yeah, plenty of excitement heading into the Thomas Cup. Please do add your own thoughts. I hope my thoughts have come across clearly, probably a little bit jumbled, but now I'm going to be talking about the Uber Cup, but it's going to be a separate video. It's going to come up here or here. And so if you haven't watched that one, go enjoy that one now. And I will see you there. If you've already come from that one, then, I don't know, pick another video. I'll probably put 2 on the screen and enjoy some more of my content. But, everyone, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.